This is by far the most excited I've been for a fight this year, in MMA or in boxing. I can't believe it's already fight week and I've been waiting to make this breakdown. Now you can argue, I have my own personal biases in that both of these guys are two of my favorite fighters, but personal biases aside, you can argue that this is the most exciting fight that they've made this year on paper, or maybe even in recent history. Main reason being both of their fight styles and their ability to finish a fight. On one hand you have JIRI, who's basically a light heavyweight Tony Ferguson with endless ability to take shots and is probably the most durable light heavyweight maybe in the history of the UFC. And on the other hand you have Alex Pereira, who's one of the best, if not the single best striker in the history of the organization, and one that, just like JIRI, has a very high finish rate. And both aren't just good at finishing, they're just generally very violent, hence why they're so frightening to watch, because they're always looking to do damage. Even if they haven't finished someone or haven't finished someone yet, you can tell the damage that they've done on the other person's face. And unlike other fights in the past that they've made that look amazing on paper, like Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou or Yoel Romero versus Adesanya, this one is actually likely to be quite violent. Like, it's not going to be a bore fest like some of those other guys, because a lot of those guys, when they get in there, they get apprehensive and they don't really want to commit to big shots. But given both of these guys' willingness to take big shots in order to land their own, and given how much they headhunt, there's a very good chance that we actually get, like 90% chance we actually get the fight that we want. So for my breakdown, I'm basically going to give the general reasons why I think both fighters can win, and then I'm going to give a more detailed breakdown of how I specifically think the fight is going to play out. I'll start by looking at JIRI's reasons for winning this fight. Now, one of the factors worth considering is Alex's age and also the general damage that he's taken. Now, don't get me wrong, Alex is obviously a championship level fighter, we all know how good he is, but he is technically out of his prime. I mean, he's 36 years old, so he's not exactly like way past it, but he's probably not at his peak. And you also have to consider the fact that even though he's quite inexperienced in MMA overall, like he has 10-11 fights just within this sport, he has 50 fights in kickboxing, and on top of that, some amateur experience. That's obviously going to count for a lot of damage, and also you have to consider the amount of camps and the amount of general hard sparring sessions that he's had. Now, another reason why JIRI can win the fight is just how hittable Alex is. It's not as bad as what some fans make it out, but he is someone that will take shots given his own style, like of being willing to take shots, and also just the fact that he doesn't really move his head side to side much. He will be eating shots in this. He ate big shots in the John fight, and we all saw the KO that he took, so if JIRI starts to find him consistently, he could put him out with any one of his shots. And it's worth noting that on top of that, JIRI probably has one of the best chins, if not the best chin, in the UFC. If you see the Dominic Reyes fight, if you see the Glover fight, or even his fights before this in Ryzen, the guy has an incredible ability to eat big shots and not really get put off. Now, I know he's not the best wrestler in the division, like I don't think he's even as good as John. I mean, I think there's a gap between him and John Blachowicz, but he did tap Glover Teixeira. Now, I know they were tired and they were obviously both beaten up, and it was a bit of a mad scramble. He kind of ended up getting the neck. He wasn't really looking to grapple, but he did get that. So it's worth noting that even though he's not as likely to get the takedown on Alex as John was, or as some of the other guys in the division are, he will have that threat and Alex will have to respect it. And finally, JIRI is just way more experienced in MMA than Alex. Alex is obviously overall the more experienced combat sports fighter, but JIRI has about 30, maybe more than 30 MMA fights compared to Alex's 10. That is a significant difference, and one that if the fight goes on past the 2 or 3 round mark, that will really start to pay off for JIRI. With that said, now it's time to look at Alex Pereira's side of the equation and for why I think he will win this fight. I'll start by looking at one of the factors that people seem to be ignoring the most about this fight, and that is how quickly they have let JIRI come back and fight for the title. For those who don't know, JIRI's injury, the reason why he had to actually vacate the belt, was not just a normal injury, but was described as one of the worst injuries that a light heavyweight can take. Now, I don't actually understand the ins and outs of that, like why his shoulder injury was so much worse, but that's what all these experts said. At the time, they said that he'll need over a year to come back, and if I'm not mistaken, he was the champion at the end of last year. Like, he was meant to defend his title against Glover in December, so they're technically bringing him back too soon. And I even saw Alex in one post mention that he had surprised him with the timing of the event. And obviously this might not play a factor, like JIRI's been saying that he's healthy and everybody claims that it's all good now, but given Alex saying that and how much sooner this is than expected, I am a bit scared for JIRI's sake. Another reason for why Alex might win this fight is obviously the power aspect. Now, you will say the same applies for JIRI, but JIRI actually has a habit of finishing fights off of the back of a lot of damage. Like, it takes him some time to accumulate the damage. And he'll finish his opponents once they're softened up or they'll basically retire. Like, he has a bunch of TKOs via like doctor stoppage or the corner retiring the fighter. Whereas with Alex, he has more explosive power, not just power that will wear on you as the fight goes on, but he can put you out randomly, like his left hook, his big flying knees. He knows how to kind of shut the lights out quickly. And beyond just the power, it's the fact that he's the best striker arguably in the UFC, especially if you look at credentials including things outside the UFC, like his Glory career. This guy was the middleweight and the light heavyweight champion in Glory, meaning he's not just there with power, he's technically very sound, he has very good fundamentals. And in a matchup like this where he won't have to worry about the takedown threat as much as he did in his previous fight or even going into the Sean Strickland fight, he should be more at ease here. A final factor that I also wanted to mention is, just like I said for JIRI, that Alex has likely taken a lot of damage in his fights and in his camps throughout his life, so has JIRI. JIRI is actually very experienced. Even though he's in his early 30s, I believe, he's taken way more damage than a normal early 30-year-old light heavyweight. You just have to look at his last two fights where, even though he gets the finish against Dominic Reyes and Glover Teixeira, he has to walk through shots that would arguably KO 99% of the division. And if he takes those same shots by Alex Pereira, he will 1000% get finished. So with all of that out of the way, time for my final breakdown and prediction of the fight. Though I can see the fight going many different ways, I have to go with the prediction that I think is most likely. And so I see both guys coming out and commanding the center of the octagon, both looking to land some shots but nothing big to the head. They don't want to get engaged with anything too crazy. But as it goes on, I think JIRI will be the first one to push the pace. I think after being apprehensive early on because of the shoulder injury and ring rust, he's going to start making some risky decisions and look for Alex's head. I think Alex will stay patient on the feet. I think there's a good chance he could get caught, like it's not out of the question, but I have to go with Alex staying patient and slowly wearing on JIRI's body, landing some big calf kicks, slowing him down. And this was the same thing we saw in the Adesanya fight, where in the first round Adesanya looked way more explosive and crisp, and by the end, due to all the jabs to the body that he ate from Alex and the calf kick that Alex lands, he slows people down. Same thing in the John fight, the switch kicks, the calf kicks, the big jabs to the body, all shots which are easy for someone who's the caliber kickboxer that Alex is, and against JIRI it'll be even easier given how heavily JIRI sits on all of his shots, which will as a result start to frustrate JIRI, and I think he's going to start looking for big shots rather than set them up, and I think he might shoot for a takedown, not get it, get even more frustrated, and then lunge in with a big shot where Alex can step back, KO him with a big left hook, or like he was in the second Adesanya fight in MMA, hunt him down, frustrate him, back him up against the fence, which will be harder in this fight than in that fight, but nonetheless, Alex will start to move him back as the fight goes on, and I think he'll finish him either against the fence or with a step back KO off the fence, and I think he gets it done via KO/TKO within the first 3 rounds.